let's run through a few topics that I think should be at the top of the news and unfortunately have not been. And something I've been talking to you about is the importance, this tipping point, I think, that is happening in Iran. And hats off to Mark Dubowitz and Saad Ghassaminejad, who had a great piece in the Wall Street Journal about what are things we could be doing to begin to tip what's happening in Iran. And we'll give you a little bit of an update on Tariq Ramadan's case that seems to be exploding and again is ignored by much of the mainstream media. But first, let's talk about Iran. What can we be doing other than, as I said, hats off to the president for covering through tweets and through attention in the State of the Union a bit of the importance of the Iranian Revolution, that's probably the best American policy supporting that. But as Dubowitz and others point out, the money needs to be choked off in Iran, rather than what the Obama administration did was hand hundreds of billions of dollars back to Iran. We should be imposing sanctions. We should be strangulating their regime. And, one of the barriers, as they point out, is the European countries and businesses, and including Boeing and a few other, that when the sanction regime ended, started to go to Tehran quickly to try to open up these new contracts, be it Airbus or whatever, trying to start to build airplanes and etc. And they thought, this would be a way to open the economy, and using the same logic that some use for Cuba and China. And as we see with these governments, they keep the money from their people and they use it to feed genocide in Syria. They use it to feed Hezbollah and terror around the world. And that's what the signs on the streets said. The signs on the streets in Tehran and Qom and elsewhere said, stop sending money to Syria. Look here, not over there. The people are upset. They saw that. And the Obama administration is nowhere to be found to talk about all of their bizarre, roundly and soundly criticized comments that somehow this was going to go to the people. Even a video that President Obama distributed in Iran on the holiday of Nowruz said, this money will come to you, that you can improve your societies, your workforce, etc. They saw none of it. It's all corrupt. So we have to hit Ayatollah Khamanei in his pocketbook. And how do you do that? The Trump administration has offered some support, but while Khamenei brags about his lifestyle, he runs multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates. His three most valuable possessions are the execution of the Imam Khomeinei's order, or the EIKO, the Mustazafan Foundation, and the Atsan Quds Razavi. The businesses have interests in nearly every Iranian industry and are worth approximately $200 billion. And since 1979 revolution, they've acquired considerable share of the assets from the systematic confiscation of private property that followed that revolution. They don't pay taxes, they've never been audited, they use political connections to maneuver their rivals. And Reuters conducted an investigation in 2013 that it was worth around $95 billion, or more than half of its assets in real estate. So, what can we do? The bottom line is, the U.S. Treasury in 2013 enacted sanctions against EIKO and 37 of its subsidiaries. Dubowitz goes on to explain in the Wall Street Journal that a Treasury press release said the entity's goal is to generate and control massive, off-the-books investments, shielded from the view of the Iranian people and international regulators. And yet, the Obama administration lifted the sanctions as part of the 2015 nuclear deal. Never mind, as Dubowitz and his colleagues say, never mind that their original designation had nothing to do with Iran's nuclear program. Last year's investigation by Reuters in January 2017 found that companies controlled by EIKO signed at least 5 contracts with foreign firms. Those included a $10 billion agreement to build oil refineries in South Korea's Daewoo Engineering and Construction. And it goes on. While these entities are far, let me quote Dubowitz's piece, while these entities are far from transparent, the U.S. knows enough to target them with sanctions. Foundations for the Defense of Democracy has identified 146 Khomeini-owned companies and 144 executives and board members associated with these companies. The Trump administration can use the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act of 2016 to isolate the Khamenei business empire, freeze its assets, and penalize international companies that enrich the Iranian regime. So, if President Trump is on the same side as the Iranian protesters against the supreme leader, now is the time to push that tipping point to move forward. That is what we should be doing. Where is it? We need economic sanctions. Just as when the Syrian revolution started, we talked about the need for sanctions against Assad, and they would have worked had the Russians and Iranians not given him a blank check and even printed money for him outside Syria, as the sanctions were strangulating the Assad family and the Assad regime. That's what needs to happen in Iran.